Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to explore one of the most important and fascinating processes in nature, photosynthesis. Now, before we begin, just take a moment and think about this. Have you ever wondered how plants prepare their own food without going anywhere, without cooking, and without depending on others? The answer is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process by which green plants use sunlight to convert simple substances like carbon dioxide and water into food. This food is stored in the form of glucose, which helps the plant grow and survive. But here's something even more interesting: this process doesn't just help plants. It is actually the reason why life exists on Earth. The oxygen that we breathe every second is released during photosynthesis. So directly or indirectly, every living organism depends on this process. In this video, I will explain photosynthesis in a very simple and easy way, step by step, so that you can clearly understand how it works. By the end of this video, you will not only understand the process but also be able to explain it confidently in exams or presentations. So without wasting any time, let's get started and dive into the amazing world of photosynthesis. Seedling. Now before we dive deep into the topic, let's quickly look at what we're going to cover in this video. This will give you a clear roadmap so you can easily follow along without getting confused. First, we'll understand what photosynthesis actually is in simple terms. Then, we'll look at the raw materials required for this process, what exactly plants need to make their food. After that, we'll break down the entire process of photosynthesis step by step, so you can clearly understand how everything happens inside the plant. We'll also discuss the role of important factors like sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, and chlorophyll, and how each of them contributes to the process. Finally, we'll understand why photosynthesis is so important, not just for plants but for all living beings on Earth. And at the end, I'll also include a quick question to test your understanding. So make sure you watch the video till the end, because by the end of this video, you'll have a complete and clear understanding of photosynthesis. Now let's start with the most important question: what exactly is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is the process by which green plants prepare their own food using sunlight. In this process, plants take in carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil, and with the help of sunlight, they convert these into food. This food is in the form of glucose, which is a type of sugar that provides energy for the plant to grow and survive. This entire process mainly takes place in the leaves, which contain a green pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll plays a very important role because it helps the plant absorb sunlight, which is the main source of energy for photosynthesis. So in simple words, photosynthesis is the process of converting light energy into chemical energy. And one more important thing: during this process, plants also release oxygen into the atmosphere, which is essential for all living beings. That means the oxygen we breathe every day is actually produced by plants through photosynthesis. So you can say that photosynthesis is not just important for plants, but for all life on Earth. Now that we understand what photosynthesis is, let's move on to the next part: the chemical equation behind this process. Now let's take a closer look at the raw materials required for photosynthesis. For this process to happen, plants need four main things. First is sunlight. Sunlight is the primary source of energy that drives the entire process of photosynthesis. Second is water. Water is absorbed by the roots from the soil and transported to the leaves, where photosynthesis takes place. Third is carbon dioxide. Plants take in carbon dioxide from the air through tiny openings in their leaves called stomata. And finally, chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the green pigment present in the leaves that helps capture sunlight. Each of these components plays a very important role. If even one of them is missing, photosynthesis cannot occur properly. So you can think of these four elements as the essential ingredients required for plants to prepare their own food. Now that we understand what photosynthesis is, let's look at the chemical equation behind this process. Don't worry, I'll keep it very simple. The basic equation of photosynthesis is carbon dioxide plus water, in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, produces glucose and oxygen. In chemical terms, it is written as carbon dioxide plus H2O, right pointing arrow, C6 hydrogen oxide plus O2. Now let's break this down so it becomes easy to understand. Carbon dioxide, which comes from the air, and water, which is absorbed from the soil, are the raw materials. Sunlight provides the energy required for the reaction, and chlorophyll helps in absorbing that sunlight. As a result of this process, glucose is formed. This glucose is the food that plants use for energy and growth. At the same time, oxygen is released into the atmosphere as a byproduct. So whenever you see plants, remember, they are constantly working like small natural factories, producing food and releasing oxygen. Understanding this equation helps you clearly see how simple substances are converted into something as important as food. Now let's understand the main product of photosynthesis, glucose. Glucose is a type of sugar that acts as the primary source of energy for plants. It is formed during the chemical reactions of photosynthesis using carbon dioxide and water. Once glucose is produced, the plant uses it in different ways. First, it is used immediately to provide energy for growth in various life processes like respiration. Second, some of the glucose is converted into starch and stored in different parts of the plant such as roots, stems, and leaves for future use. Third, glucose is also used to form other important substances like cellulose, which helps in building the plant's structure. So glucose is not just food, it is essential for the plant's survival, growth, and development. Without glucose, plants would not be able to perform their basic functions. Now let's bring everything together and understand the complete process of photosynthesis step by step. This will help you clearly see how all the components we discussed work together. Step 1. Absorption of water. The roots of the plant absorb water from the soil, which is then transported to the leaves. Step 2. Intake of carbon dioxide. The leaves take in carbon dioxide from the air through tiny openings called stomata. Step 3. Absorption of sunlight. Chlorophyll present in the leaves captures energy from sunlight. Step 4. Chemical reactions. Using this energy, the plant converts carbon dioxide and water into glucose through a series of chemical reactions. Step 5. Release of oxygen. As a result of these reactions, oxygen is produced and released into the atmosphere. So in simple terms, plants take in water and carbon dioxide, use sunlight as energy, produce food in the form of glucose, and release oxygen. This entire process is what we call photosynthesis. Understanding these steps makes the concept very easy and clear. Now let's understand why photosynthesis is so important. Photosynthesis is not just a process for plants, it is essential for the survival of almost all living organisms on Earth. First, photosynthesis produces oxygen. The oxygen released during this process is what we breathe to survive. Without it, life would not exist. Second, it forms the base of the food chain. Plants are called producers because they make their own food. Animals and humans depend on plants either directly or indirectly for food. Third, photosynthesis helps maintain the balance of gases in the atmosphere. It absorbs carbon dioxide and releases oxygen, which is very important for maintaining environmental balance. So, photosynthesis is not just important for plants, it supports life on Earth in multiple ways. Now let's look at some common reasons that can affect plant growth and reduce the efficiency of processes like photosynthesis. Understanding these factors is very important because even if all conditions seem correct, plants may still not grow properly due to these issues. Let's go through them one by one. First, overwatering. Giving too much water to plants can actually be harmful. Excessive moisture in the soil reduces the amount of oxygen available to the roots. This can lead to suffocation and even rotting of the roots, which affects the plant's ability to absorb nutrients. Second, poor soil quality. If the soil lacks essential nutrients or has an improper pH level, the plant cannot grow properly. Healthy soil is necessary for supplying minerals that support growth and photosynthesis. Third, lack of sunlight. Sunlight is essential for photosynthesis. If a plant does not receive enough sunlight, it cannot produce enough food, which leads to weak and slow growth. Next, overcrowding. When too many plants grow close together, they compete for resources like sunlight, water, and nutrients. This competition can limit their growth and reduce overall health. Another important factor is lack of water. Just like too much water is harmful, too little water can also damage plants. Insufficient water leads to dehydration, causing the plant to wilt and stop functioning properly. Then we have environmental stress. Extreme conditions like very high or low temperatures, frost, or strong winds can damage plant tissues and slow down growth. Finally, age. Just like all living organisms, plants also age over time. As they grow older, their efficiency decreases, leaves may turn yellow, and overall growth slows down. So, all these factors can directly or indirectly affect photosynthesis and plant health. That's why maintaining the right balance of water, sunlight, nutrients, and environment is essential for healthy plant growth. Now let's understand the role of sunlight in photosynthesis. Sunlight is the main source of energy for this entire process. Without sunlight, photosynthesis simply cannot take place. Plants capture sunlight using chlorophyll, which is present in their leaves. You can think of chlorophyll like a solar panel that absorbs energy from the sun. This energy is then used to power the chemical reactions that convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose. In other words, sunlight provides the energy needed to transform simple raw materials into food. The intensity of sunlight also affects the rate of photosynthesis. When there is more sunlight, the process happens faster. When sunlight is low, the process slows down. That's why plants grow better in places where they receive enough sunlight. So sunlight is not just important, it is absolutely essential for the survival of plants and, ultimately, all living beings. Now let's talk about chlorophyll, which plays a very important role in photosynthesis. Chlorophyll is a green pigment found in the leaves of plants. It is the reason why most plants appear green in color. But its role is much more important than just giving color. Chlorophyll is responsible for absorbing sunlight, which is the main source of energy needed for photosynthesis. Without chlorophyll, plants would not be able to capture this energy. You can think of chlorophyll as a natural energy absorber or a solar panel inside the plant. It absorbs light energy and converts it into a form that the plant can use to carry out chemical reactions. Most of this process takes place in tiny structures inside the leaf cells called chloroplasts, where chlorophyll is present. If a plant does not have enough chlorophyll, it cannot perform photosynthesis properly, which affects its growth and survival. So chlorophyll is absolutely essential for converting sunlight into usable energy. Now let's understand how temperature affects the rate of photosynthesis using this graph. On the horizontal axis, we have temperature, and on the vertical axis, we have the rate of photosynthesis. As you can see, the graph is divided into three main regions: low temperature, optimum temperature, and high temperature. Let's start with the low temperature region. At very low temperatures, the rate of photosynthesis is quite slow. This is because the enzymes responsible for photosynthesis are not very active. Since photosynthesis is controlled by enzyme activity, lower temperatures reduce the speed of the entire process. Now, as the temperature increases, we move into the middle region. Here, the rate of photosynthesis increases rapidly. This happens because enzymes become more active and efficient as the temperature rises. The reactions inside the plant occur faster, leading to increased production of glucose. This continues until we reach the peak of the graph, which represents the optimum temperature. At this point, photosynthesis is happening at its maximum rate. This is the ideal temperature range where the enzymes are working at their best. But what happens if the temperature increases beyond this point? As we move into the high temperature region, the graph shows a sharp decline in the rate of photosynthesis. This is because very high temperatures start to damage the enzymes. The enzymes lose their structure, a process called denaturation, and they can no longer function properly. As a result, the rate of photosynthesis decreases and may even stop completely. So from this graph, we can clearly understand that temperature affects photosynthesis in three stages: low temperature, slow rate; optimum temperature, maximum rate; high temperature, decreasing rate. This also shows that temperature acts as a limiting factor. Photosynthesis can only occur efficiently within a specific temperature range. That's why plants grow best in moderate environmental conditions. Now let's understand how light intensity affects the rate of photosynthesis using this graph. On the horizontal axis, we have light intensity, and on the vertical axis, we have the rate of photosynthesis. As you can see, the graph starts from the origin and rises upward. Let's break this down step by step. At low light intensity, the rate of photosynthesis is very slow. This is because the plant is not receiving enough light energy to carry out the process efficiently. As the light intensity increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. This happens because more light energy is available, which allows the plant to produce more glucose. This region where the graph is rising shows that light is the limiting factor. In simple words, the more light the plant gets, the faster photosynthesis occurs. However, this increase does not continue forever. After a certain point, the graph becomes flat. This point is called the saturation point. At the saturation point, increasing light intensity no longer increases the rate of photosynthesis. Why does this happen? Because now other factors, such as carbon dioxide concentration and temperature, become limiting factors instead of light. So even if more light is available, the plant cannot increase the rate of photosynthesis further. This clearly shows that photosynthesis depends on multiple factors, and improving just one factor has a limit. So to summarize, low light intensity, slow rate; increasing light, increasing rate; saturation point, constant rate. This concept is very important because it explains how light controls photosynthesis only up to a certain level. Now let's talk about another very important factor affecting photosynthesis, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is one of the main raw materials required for photosynthesis. Plants use carbon dioxide from the air to produce glucose, which is their food. Without carbon dioxide, photosynthesis simply cannot take place. Now, let's understand how carbon dioxide concentration affects the rate of photosynthesis using this graph. On the horizontal axis, we have the concentration of carbon dioxide, and on the vertical axis, we have the rate of photosynthesis. At low carbon dioxide levels, the rate of photosynthesis is very slow. This is because the plant does not have enough carbon dioxide to produce glucose efficiently. As the concentration of carbon dioxide increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. This is because more raw material is available for the plant to carry out the process. In this region, carbon dioxide is the limiting factor. That means increasing carbon dioxide directly increases the rate of photosynthesis. However, just like light intensity, this increase does not continue forever. After a certain point, the graph becomes flat. This point is known as the saturation point. At this stage, increasing carbon dioxide concentration further does not increase the rate of photosynthesis. Why does this happen? Because now other factors, such as light intensity or temperature, become limiting factors. So even if there is plenty of carbon dioxide, the plant cannot increase photosynthesis beyond this limit. This clearly shows that photosynthesis depends on multiple factors working together. To summarize, low carbon dioxide, low photosynthesis rate. Increasing carbon dioxide, increasing rate. Saturation point, no further increase. So, carbon dioxide is essential, but only up to a certain limit. Beyond that, other factors control the process. Now it's time to quickly test your understanding. Here's a simple question for you. What are the 4 main things required for photosynthesis? Take a moment and try to recall what we discussed earlier in the video. You can pause the video here and think about your answer. This is a great way to check how much you've understood and remembered. Don't worry if you're not completely sure, just try your best. Ready with your answer? Now let's check the answer to the question. The 4 main things required for photosynthesis are sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, and chlorophyll. Sunlight provides the energy needed for the process. Water is absorbed from the soil through the roots. Carbon dioxide is taken from the air through the stomata in the leaves. And chlorophyll helps capture sunlight and start the process. All these components work together to help the plant produce food. If you got all 4 correct, great job. That means you've understood the concept really well. And if you missed any, don't worry, just go back and revise those parts once more. Now we have reached the end of our video. Let's quickly summarize what we've learned. Photosynthesis is the process by which green plants make their own food using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. We understood the chemical equation and how simple substances are converted into glucose, which provides energy for the plant. We also learned about the important roles of sunlight, chlorophyll, water, and carbon dioxide in this process. Then, we saw how glucose is formed and how it is used by plants for growth and survival. Finally, we discussed why photosynthesis is so important, not just for plants, but for all living beings, as it provides oxygen and forms the base of the food chain. So overall, photosynthesis is a fundamental process that supports life on Earth. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more educational content. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Let me know which topic should I post next. See you in the next video. Smile.